Hi, my name's Steve Bartlett, and welcome to Fight Back, my show that I have every week, or I try to have every week, in which we teach people how to fight back against injustice. Now, most of my episodes, I talk about national issues, and I talk about how I feel about politics and whatnot. But sometimes it's more important to talk about local issues. And as you know, this show is in Pasco County, where my law practice is, and it's in a little city called Port Richey. And that's where I broadcast this show, in a studio located in Port Richey, Florida. And today I have a special guest, the current mayor of Port Richey, Florida, who was a guest about a month ago, named Scott Tremblay. Scott, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing well, thank you.
I'm really glad that you're here back on the show.
I appreciate you having me back.
Welcome to Fight Back. And the reason I have you on the show tonight is because you are a great example of what it takes to fight back. You found some injustice, you rallied the troops, and you fought back successfully. So I want to talk about that tonight, but I like to talk to people because a lot of people don't really understand politics that much. And I want you to explain some simple questions and identify some players so people really understand what's going on.
Of course.
Okay, so let me introduce the cast of characters who we have here. You're the mayor of Port Richey.
Correct.
Okay, but besides having a mayor of Port Richey, there's other characters who are involved in the governance of the city as well. And there's a couple people that I know the names. I've never met them, and I'm sure you know who they are. One is a gentleman by the name of Vince Lupo.
Correct. He's our city manager.
Okay. What does a city manager do? You're the mayor, but what's the city manager do different from a mayor?
There's different forms of government within a city.
Uh-huh.
If you see, for example, the city of Tampa, the mayor actually runs the city. So not only does he make fiscal decisions, but he carries those decisions out. Okay, the form of government that we have here in Port Richey, the mayor basically makes fiscal decisions with the council, and then those decisions are carried out by a full-time employee, which would be the city manager. So they actually carry out the functions of what we actually decide on in terms of, at our meetings, in terms of the city.
So you do a lot of the decision-making, and a lot of the executory duties are done by the city manager.
Correct.
Okay, so like if we took it national, the president of the United States would, under this type of system, would like help write laws, but when it comes to the day-to-day operation of governments, then the city manager would do something like that.
Right, he would have his cabinet that would carry different things out, for example.
Okay, and who is James Mathel?
He's the city attorney.
Okay, and what does he do? Does he work for Mr. Lupo, or does he work for you, or what does the city attorney do?
He works for the city, and the city manager governs all the employees. There's 62 employees, and one of the employees, at least by contract, is the city attorney, which would be Jim Mathau.
So he does any type of legal issues involving the city?
Correct.
Okay. And the county that we're in is in Pasco County.
Correct.
And the county, when it's not dealing with city issues, the county is run by the county commissioner.
Well, there's a board of county commissioners.
A board of county commissioners,
Correct.
5 county commissioners
Correct.
here in Pasco County. And if there was no city of Port Richey, then you guys would be all under the governance of the county.
Correct.
But because you have your own city, you get to do your own things.
We have our own bubble.
Okay, like what kind of
se.
stuff does the city do that if you didn't have a city, the county would be in charge of?
Anything government does, from budget, building roads, maintaining parks, law enforcement, police duties, fire department. We have our own fire departments. All those would be taken over by the county.
Okay. Now I want to go back to, just for review for you guys at home so you understand what's actually going on here. Port Richey, for being a really small town of just a couple thousand people,
Just under 3,000.
has had a lot of publicity lately. The biggest reason for the publicity is that the former mayor, a gentleman by the name of, how do you pronounce it?
Masad or Masad, I've heard of both.
Masad, okay. The mayor ended up getting arrested and charged with practicing medicine without a license. And then when law enforcement came to arrest him, he allegedly, and I'm saying allegedly because I'm a lawyer and I want to make sure I don't get in any trouble, he allegedly opened fire on the deputies who were going there to arrest him. Currently, he is facing charges. The former mayor of Port Richey is facing charges, multiple charges of attempted murder. He's already been found guilty after trial of obstruction of justice, which the person who was the acting mayor after we got arrested, he and a gentleman by the name of Terrence Rowe,
Correct.
were accused of conspiracy and obstruction of justice. All the charges are still pending against Terrence Rowe, and the attempted murder charges are still pending against the former mayor, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then they had a special election after all these scandals in national news, and you won the election.
Yes.
Okay? And according to everybody that I've spoken about, you've taken this city that has been drenched in scandal and have actually turned it around, and actually things are going very well right now.
That's true, and there's a misconception. The city actually was functioning, the nuts and bolts of the city were functioning well as it should. And for example, when the mayor was having personal problems that created problems, the reason FDLE began the investigation was because our city manager and city attorney called FDLE, because there's a checks and balances with this form of government, and they told FDLE there's problems here with the mayor, which started the investigation. So really the issues were more personal issues with the mayor and the vice mayor, and not necessarily the inner workings of the city.
Okay. Well, I'm going to add some other cast of characters to this drama. And the person I'm going to be mentioning first is a person by the name of Amber Mariano. Now, for those of you who watch the show Survivor, the very first all-star episode of Survivor was won by a lady by the name of Amber. Amber, I think her last name was Beach. And she married Boston Rob, who she fell in love with on the show. So Amber from Survivor's legal name right now is Mrs. Boston Rob, which makes her Amber Mariano. No relationship to the Amber Mariano we're going to talk about now, okay? So if you're a Survivor fan, don't get the two Ambers mixed up. But the Amber Mariano now is a member of the Florida legislature.
Correct.
A member of the Florida state legislature, and she's the representative for Pasco County up in Tallahassee.
For our district where Port Richey lies.
And she's very unusual because she is only 23 years old.
Correct.
She is the elected official up in Tallahassee representing most of the people who live here, and she's only 23 years old and was elected when she was a college student at what? The age of 21.
Yes.
Okay, and she defeated the last person who was a Democrat to hold any office, state, federal, or local.
Amanda Murphy.
Amanda Murphy.
Correct.
Here. So there are no Democrats in office anymore in Pasco County anywhere because she lost to Amber Mariano, who entered the election at the last second because she wasn't running, and she dropped it at the last day to actually be able to run against Miss Murphy.
Okay.
Right? So she's 23 years old, and according to Wikipedia, she is a real estate agent. That's what she does for a living, according to at least Wikipedia. I don't know whether that's true or not. And by the way, this building where we shoot this show is in the same complex where Amber Mariano has her office. So we can actually leave here and go to her office. So I'm actually right there, and I'm going to talk about somebody, so I hope she doesn't hear what I have to say, because it might not be the nicest things that I actually have to say. Okay? Now, Amber Mariano, she and the state senator, whose name was it Hooper?
Senator Hooper.
Senator Hooper is the state senator. Those two people came up with a proposal, and they actually proposed to dissolve and eliminate and basically kill your city, Port Richey, and say it doesn't exist anymore.
Correct. They were going to use legislative power to revoke our city charter.
And so they were just the two of them and two other local legislatures. The four of them were going to take a vote, and if they recommended dissolving the charter, then it would go up to Tallahassee, and then Tallahassee, in all probability, would have rubber stamped that, and then Port Richey would no longer exist as a city.
Right. There were 6 people that would have voted, 3 representatives and 3 senators that are in this jurisdiction, and she would have needed 4 votes to pass the bill.
And the people who actually live in Port Richey, the citizens, they didn't have a say at all, legally.
Correct.
She was going to just make the decision. If we want to get rid of the city, that's the way it is going to be.
Correct.
And the decision was basically already made because she said, I want to get rid of Port Richey. I want to do this.
Yes.
Okay? And the reason she gave for wanting to do this, at least according to what I've read, was that she claimed that due to the corruption and all the problems going on in the city, it should stop existing and the county should just take over.
Correct. That's what she told the media when she originally was going to file the bill.
Now, I understand she made allegations, at least this is what I read. She made allegations that the city inappropriately refinanced a $3 million bond and misspent redevelopment money. That's what she alleged when she made a report to FDLE law enforcement about, because she was saying that there was illegal actions going on in the city, not related to the
Correct. She filed a
shooting.
criminal complaint into the city.
Right. And so that's what she said. She said that the city misspent $3 million in bonds because they did this refinance, and she said it would cost an extra
$17 million to pay the $3 million off.
And it turns out that completely was untrue.
Correct.
That it was only going to cost in interest about $1 million.
If that, yes. It was
If
what it
that,
was.
a lot less than the 17 million you said she did?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I thought it was about 10 million, but okay, you're the mayor more than I do. But that turned out not to be true. She also made a claim that money was being illegally used to pay salaries of some employees, I guess for the city of
Yeah,
Port
correct.
Richey. And she said that that was done illegally, but it's my understanding that according to Mr. Lupo, the city manager, they did an audit and FDLE completely dismissed all of her allegations and said that the books were fine.
Correct, because CRA funds by statute are allowed to be used for administrative functions. It says right in the statute, which obviously is salaries.
So her allegations were false, basically.
Correct. They were incorrect.
Okay, and then on October 4th, just what, a week ago or so, 2 weeks ago? I don't know the date, I'm constantly working, but
Yes.
earlier this month, criminal charges were alleged by Mr. Lupo and Mr. Mathau, alleging that Amber Mariano filed a false police report and wanted her prosecuted for filing a false police report.
That was, yeah, the city's position.
Okay, so we have a state representative accusing the city officials of committing crimes and the city accusing her of committing crimes.
Correct.
Now, FDLE did an investigation and they said that they didn't find anything that she did which would rise to being a criminal offense either.
Well, they turned it over to Bernie McCabe's office, and he issued a statement saying that her actions were not criminal in nature.
Okay. And of course, you don't have an opinion of that. All you can do is say that what she said may not be criminal, but they were untrue. Her allegations were false.
Correct. We have documentation. The bond that was done, we actually saved the taxpayers a lot of money. What happened is we did a bond through the League of Cities, which is where all the cities have an organization. So we teamed up with 9 other cities to do all our bonds together. Obviously, the amount of money that was involved, we had real low interest rates, which saved each city a lot of money. So we had a letter from the League of Cities saying that not only was what she said untrue, but we did everything within the confines of the law, and we saved our taxpayers about $320,000 by doing the bond with the League of Cities with the other group of cities.
And you did you do that while you were the mayor, or was that before you were the mayor?
That was something Jim Mathau did as our city attorney.
Excellent. Good job, Jim.
So, right. So they saved our taxpayers a lot of money by doing the bonds in that manner.
Okay. Well, now let's talk about the county commission. Okay, the county of Pasco County.
Okay.
Because they would have been in charge, the county commission, the 5 county commissioners would have been charged if it would have succeeded to kill your city.
Right, all our funding, which we have a $12.5 million budget, which we get from ad valorem taxes and such, and then we get all kinds of federal funding too for anything from BP to Penny for Pasco, all these other funds. Plus, we have an enterprise fund. The city owns water wells, so we sell water not only to the city but to the county, so they have to buy water from us. So they would take all our wells, waterfront property, they would have all our funding, all that would have gone to the county.
Okay. Now the county commission is made up of 5 people.
Correct.
And the 5 people, I think I know all of them, or most of the ones who are in the county commission. There's Catherine Starkey was she the chairperson of the county commission?
I believe so.
Okay, so there's Catherine Starkey, there's Mike Moore, Ron Oakley, Mike Wells, and there's one other person. Who is it?
It's Jack Mariano's.
Jack Mariano. He has the same last name as Amber Mariano.
Correct.
Is that a coincidence?
No, they're related.
Jack is her father.
Correct.
And a lot of people said the only reason she won the election is because Jack has been county commissioner for 15 years. People recognize the name, and that's how somebody without any political experience, who was a 21-year-old college student, was able to get elected in Pasco County. At least people like me have made that suggestion.
Well, everyone has their opinion. I don't know, how she was elected or why. So.
But if her plan would have succeeded with your city being dissolved, her father would have been one of the 5 people controlling Port Richey.
The funding, yes, would have gone back to the county.
Okay. And so there's been allegations that this was a power grab, that she was acting on behalf of her father so that he could try to take Port Richey for the county, as opposed to leaving Port Richey to the Port Richeans to decide their own fate.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I know that 5 days ago, was it October 11th? You called for a meeting
Well, no, the legislature had their meeting where they normally pass local bills.
Okay, but okay, I'm sorry, but there was a whole lot of there was a petition that was done in which about half of the citizens signed a petition objecting to the dissolution of the city, and there was some sort of big meeting in which a whole bunch of people showed up and complained about what was going on.
That was our city. We hold meetings every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And one of the things on the agenda was the dissolution issue. Because from my end, the issue wasn't necessarily dissolving versus not dissolving the city. The issue that I had with this whole bill was it seemed that they were circumventing the people to make the decision for the people.
Right. I mean, the people should decide if they want to be a city. If the people say, we don't want to be a city, we want to be part of the county.
Then so be it.
Then so be it.
Right.
But don't tell these people, how long's the city been around for?
1925 was when the original charter was formed.
Yeah. Don't let these citizens who have a city, who are following the laws, they're not doing anything wrong. I mean, they're not responsible for the acts of the mayor who's in jail right now. You know, you're doing a great job, who they democratically elected in a fair election. If they would have done this, they would have been disenfranchising the voice of the people who voted for you to be mayor.
Correct, and that was my issue from the beginning, is I felt that the legislature was overreaching and going that direction, as opposed to how it's normally done to dissolve a city, which would be by referendum, which would be by vote.
Right.
Of the citizens within the city. And you have to understand what happened here in Port Richey was unprecedented. There's only been 2 cases in the last 30 years where the legislatures come in to dissolve a city. One was where it was just a non-functioning government. They didn't have a mayor. They didn't have taxes. It was basically a ghost city where they just looped it back into the county. The other is because they put an airstrip through the middle of a small city, and obviously the city couldn't function because it was geographically impossible.
There are some, I mean, historically, like right now, most urban areas, most cities are Democrat around the country. Even in the red states, most cities are Democrat, even if the surrounding areas might be Republican. So there's situations in which a city could have a Democratic government while the county could be a Republican government. This could allow counties to dissolve cities, like Tampa could be dissolved by the county if they wanted to do something like
Sure.
that. I mean, huge cities, New York City could be dissolved if the county decides to get together and collude to do this. But this wasn't even a county-wide initiative or a ballot. This was just several individuals with the power to.
This was the state legislature that was proposing the bill.
But it wasn't being proposed by the state legislature. Just 4 local politicians were proposing the bill to take to the legislature. Then the legislature itself would have voted on it, but they would rubber stamp whatever the local politicians.
Correct, because the guy that's a legislature in Daytona isn't going to overrule what happens here in Pasco County.
But they lost. You won. You saved your city. And that's, I think, what I read is that a lot of people, a lot of the public actually showed up and complained, and they all wore matching shirts or hats or something.
Correct. There was a public outcry when this happened.
Right.
And the outcry came to me, basically, because I was the new mayor.
Right.
And people said, this isn't fair, this isn't what we want. So at that point, obviously, there was a lot of media involvement. I was in front of the cameras a lot in the last 2 weeks. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes work. I can tell you that the representatives that were going to vote on this took my phone calls. They were very good to work with. Mm-hmm. They were very fair and open-minded.
And Hooper, the senator who was with Amber to begin with, he actually jumped to your defense. At least that's what I read in the media. He
Correct.
said, hey, let's give this guy a shot. He's doing a good job as mayor. Everybody likes him. Let's not dissolve the city, at least not now.
Correct.
Okay, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, he was the sponsor for the bill.
But then he changed his mind.
Sure.
What's the status now?
Well, what happened is they decided to do what they want to do is what's called a legislative performance audit, which I welcome for 2 reasons. Number one, the city's financially healthy, and we're, as you can imagine, with the criminal complaint filed into the city, we were audited by the state. FDLE came in. So we've been through it this year already a couple times. But a performance audit also goes into where the money's being spent and if there's any way to function as a city a little more efficiently. And I welcome that because it benefits the people at the end of the day. If they can come in and say, hey, you can do some things and make things run more efficiently, spend less money and get the same result, then I'm really happy to be able to do that.
Okay. Now, here's a question. There's been allegations of a power grab, and I'm referring basically to a story that was done by Bay News 9, in which they reported that the city attorney, what's his name again?
Jim Matthew.
Okay, filed a bunch of paperwork basically making allegations that Jack Mariano was actually trying to do some things with the former mayor that may not have been completely in the city's best interest.
There were some concerns there, I believe. Long before I was there, I don't know a whole lot about what happened. You have to understand that the city manager and city attorney within Port Richey have been there for much longer. So they were privy to what was going on long before I was.
Well, the allegations that I heard was that Jack Mariano, of the county commissioner, was involved with Mayor Dale Masad in a scheme to avoid bidding processes on dredging projects, and we're doing something called piggybacking in order to award.
Well, piggybacking's legal, and it's done all the time. It actually saves people a lot of money.
Right.
For example, if we Port Richey want to buy a fire truck, we only buy one at a time, so we pay full price.
Right.
The county, when they buy fire trucks, they buy 8 or 10 at a time. So what we do is, if we wanted to save money, we would get their contract, and we would say, hey, we get a much better rate, so let's add one fire truck on their contract, which is a piggyback, and we get ours for cheaper. So it benefits the people.
But Mr. Matthew made allegations, but in this particular case, the piggybacking wasn't appropriate.
Well, the issue was more of the bid.
Okay. Can you explain that?
From what I know, what happened was this involved either state or federal money. It wasn't taxpayers' money. There was going to go out. They were going to put a dredging for the canals out to bid. And I think what happened is the contractor at some point contacted people within the city, as well as even the person that's within the county, which it's not illegal, but it's not usually done that way. The county then sent correspondence. The first we knew about it in terms of the city was the county sent us notice saying there's some bid irregularities with this issue that involves your mayor, it involves your bid for one of your canals. So you have to stop the process because we can't release the funds with these irregularities in the bidding process.
Okay. Now, is there any financial reason that the county would want to take over your city?
Well, they would get all the assets. You have to look at a city that we have about 30 million in assets.
Owned by the city, not the people who live there, but you're saying the city itself has 30 million?
Yeah, we
assets?
have property, we have water wells, we have real estate, cars, fire trucks. I mean, we have a lot of assets, and our debt is less than $2.5 million. So
your assets far outweigh your debt?
Correct. Our debt is, our budget's $12.5 million, just to put things in perspective. Our debt service is less than 3% of the budget.
Right.
So we're very financially sound. And remember, the real estate that we have is all waterfront. We own all the waterfront property that goes from the bayou to the river and out to the Gulf. So we are what they call the gateway to the Gulf. So we control the waterways. But we also have all the wells that provides a lot of water, not only to our city, but to the surrounding areas in the county. And
I read that one of the goals of Pasco County is they want to actually build up the county by using the water type areas, and that if they were able to successfully take over Port Richey, that would be a big feather in their cap.
Well, they would be able to control the decisions in terms of what happens down there.
Okay. Now, economically, are you aware of how well Pasco County is doing compared to Port Richey?
Well, that was one of my concerns, because when you go to a park in Port Richey, in our city, they're well maintained, the mangroves are trimmed. They're just very nice. One of the things when I went to the county meeting is they were talking about the county didn't have enough money to maintain their own parks. Right. So there was some concern.
But there's all kinds of financial issues. Like, for instance, we're both criminal defense attorneys.
Correct.
I had a client who was accused of a crime here in Pasco County, got arrested in Pasco County, but she was kept in jail in Brooksville, even though she didn't have any charges in Brooksville, because there was not enough money here to keep her in the jail. So Pasco County was paying other jails and other counties to house their inmates because they had screwed up the budget so much that they didn't have enough money to do it themselves.
Correct.
Okay? So, I mean, for them to say that they have to take over the economy of Port Richey when they don't have their own affairs in order is really hypocritical, in my opinion. I know you don't want to say anything because you're an elected official, but that's my opinion. I can say anything I want. But you know, there's been a lot of criticisms, at least in the county.
I can tell you my concern, not just as a mayor, but as a citizen in Port Richey.
Sure.
when they dissolve a city, our $12.5 million doesn't have to be spent in our area. They can take that money to Wesley Chapel or to anywhere in the county and spend it. So my concern is right now we spend all our money that we collect in taxes on our residents, and that's it. Once the city's dissolved, if that were to have happened, that money could be spent anywhere. So our citizens may not have seen the benefit of all this taxes.
And there's been a lot of criticism about the county for doing that. Like Catherine Starkey is a big developer, and a lot of money that's been for development has caused, they've been developing certain areas of Pasco County, and then there's less money for schools and stuff like that. And I've read that a lot of the reasons why there's been a problem economically in Pasco County is that the county commissioners want to attract new builders and more development. So they do that by having low impact fees, and then there's not enough money to pay for schools or roads or anything like that. And yet most of the people in the county commission are involved in real estate. Catherine Starkey's a real estate developer. Mike Wells is a realtor. Jack Mariano's daughter is in real estate, according to Wikipedia. So, I mean, they have an economic incentive to keep power in Pasco County because it helps them personally, not just the county. It helps them personally as well.
Well, you know, when I
At least that's what I've heard argued.
Well, no, I understand that the city, we operate it a little bit differently. Normally, if we allow a housing development to come in, we collect enough impact fees to build the roads up, to have the drainage and do everything to ensure that the growth is proper.
Okay, well, I'm interrupting you. We only got a little bit of time left.
Sure.
But here's what I'm telling you. You're a hero. The people of Pasco County, especially in Port Richey, are so psyched that you fought for them, you went to bat for them, and you saved their town. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming here, and thanks for teaching people how you fight back. That's what you do. You take power, and if you don't like injustice, you fight back. I'll see you next time. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thanks.